So, chapter 16, appraisals. In this chapter, we're going to describe the differences among various types of value, the theory of valuation that an appraiser uses. We're going to explain the three approaches to value, and we're going to discuss the profession of appraising in New Jersey. So, the real estate market. Well, what is a market? What is a market? What is a marketplace? Well,
Market means that where
I kind of
goods
say
can
like okay, but
sell and purchase.
a market is a place where goods can be bought and sold. It's a place where people come together to buy those goods and to sell them. All right. It can be very advantageous to buyers and sellers as a place to come together to buy and sell and trade their goods. Now, real estate's an imperfect market because you can't take the goods out to the people. You got to take the people out to the goods. So there's some lag time from the time that we find out that people need a product and how much in demand it is, and then to the time that people realize that, then the builders start going out acquiring property to then start the construction and all that. So there's a bit of a lag time in the real estate market. But real estate market is usually a pretty good indicator, though, of what's to happen in the economy ahead. You know, you could just keep tabs on what new construction is doing, what the forecasts are for new construction. You guys probably hear about it in the business news if you ever listen to it. What's going on in real estate markets, because stock markets and all those other markets, a lot of them are dependent or they could see what's in the forecast based on what's going on in the real estate market. So what is a real estate market? What is a market? It's a place where people can come together to buy, sell, and trade their goods. And real estate's an imperfect market in that you can't take the people, you can't take the goods to the people. You got to take the people out to the goods. All right. So let's see, chapter 16. Let me just prepare my notes here. 16. Doot, 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 doot. The real estate market. So, graphics. So there's 5 attributes to land. In order for land to have value, it's commonly agreed that it possesses these 5 attributes. One is that it's finite in its supply, where the land is limited and there's no land being created. So whatever is there is there. Well, I guess when that happens, you do things like they did in New York over the centuries. What did they started doing? They expanded the land. They built out new land. But I think they did the same thing in Dubai, right? They create land. I think they did the same thing in where was it? Japan, or was it Japan? They did that for their airports. They created landing strips and airports on man-made islands. You know, so it's finite in its supply. There's land. There's no new land that's being created. Well, it does from time to time, but generally speaking, it's finite in its supply. It's not there's no massive new land creation. It's physically immobile. You can't pick it up and put it in a better neighborhood. It's durable. So you could drop a bomb on it, it'll practically last forever. It'll still be there. You know, it has its own unique locations and characteristics, location, views, etc. And it's useful to people. It's got to have these 5 attributes in order to have value, right? If there's unlimited land that's available, what about supply and demand? What is that? How does that work? Large amounts of product it brings down the price, right? Physically immobile, you can't pick it up, put it in better neighborhoods, durable, lasts forever. It's unique. We pay extra for uniqueness of property, right? It's got a beautiful view. Its location is, you don't got to worry about flooding perhaps, or things of that nature. Okay. And it has to be useful to people. Okay. So supply and demand, that was we kind of jumped the gun, and I mentioned supply and demand there about that when they were talking about it's limited in its supply, but supply and demand, supply is the amount of goods offered for sale in the marketplace within a given period of time that's available to the people. Demand is the number of people that are demanding the product, that want it. So it's the number of people that are willing and able to accept the available goods at any given price during any given time period. When supply increases, prices will drop. And when demand increases, prices will rise. So this principle states that the value of a property increases if the supply of such property decreases and the demand for it either increases or remains constant, and vice versa. That means, and the opposite is true. That is supply and demand. So the value of real estate, the business of value. Well, what is value? Well, value is the monetary worth of goods, products, or services offered in a marketplace at any given time. And anytime we talk about value, we want to know its full value. So anytime we talk about value, we're talking about all of it. So value means 100%. And value can be described as the present worth of future benefits. And value doesn't remain constant over time. It fluctuates. Values fluctuate. So when the real estate markets fluctuate, just for the, prices go up, they go down, they go up, they go down. Now, there's different things that could cause that. Could be economy, could be job markets, it could be the availability of homes, it could be taxes and legislation that could affect people's wanting or ability to buy. There's a lot of things that could affect value. People could be moving out of an area in masses because of the legislation of the local politicians not enforcing law enforcement. So the criminals are running wild, yet they keep raising taxes on you. Where does that happen? You're seeing people fleeing places like California and New York. We got them coming to New Jersey and other states to get out of these areas. But New Jersey's no rose either. We've got some of the highest real estate taxes in the nation. However, we may not have the most expensive properties, so therefore, the actual number applied to those taxes that we pay could be smaller than what people pay in other states because they simply may have more expensive homes. But our taxes are definitely up there, right? So here's a little tip that I give you to sharpen your skills in valuation. Take a class with the Ottawa Group. This is a group of appraisers that put classes together for us as real estate agents to learn how to value real estate. They'll probably be able to teach you that better than your brokers would, because these guys, this is what they studied. This is what they got licenses to do. They appraise value of properties. So they have a CMA workshop that we could take to learn how to value properties. and they, the way appraisers do, and they, if they're not giving that class at any particular time, try checking out one of their seasonal workshops where they touch on CMAs just a little bit. And they still give you the same slideshows, I think, or no, it's a little bit different, but they do give some of the same materials that are important in understanding valuation of properties. So this class will update us on the seasonal market conditions and forecast of what's going to happen in the real estate market in different areas of the state and why. So that's it gives a pretty good insight to keep sharp as a real estate agent when to keep up on things. They'll keep you up on the news and what's going on in that market, in the marketplace. Okay. So here are the real estate views during tax time. Your home is seen by the owner, the buyer, the real estate agent, and the tax man. Right? Tell me that's not true. So that's during tax time. This is how the homeowner sees their home. A very modest, right? Very modest view of how they see their home. But when you deal with us as real estate agents, usually they want and they think their home's worth a lot more suddenly, all of a sudden. They no longer see their homes like this. Oop. Shoot, what happened here? Stop that recording for a moment. All right, brute. Oh, weird. Okay. They no longer see their home like this, but they see it rather like this. The real estate agent, the buyer, the appraiser, and the seller all changed all of a sudden when they're selling their property, that they view it in a different way. Well, that's how much money they want to get out of it, right? That's what's changed. And sometimes this could be frustrating for us as as real estate agents. We got to deal with the homeowner who has unrealistic expectations of the value of their property. So when we're trying to help them sell their home, they think it's worth more than it really is. And that can be extremely frustrating for the real estate agent who's trying to deal in reality and sell your home. To price your home properly. Oh. So when we're seeing the homeowner that wants a lot more for the home than it's really worth, how do we address this issue? That could be a problem. It's not a simple one because we got to deal with people. Maybe they want to get it more for their house because of they need to get more for their home in order to purchase their next one. They need so much money out of the sale, you know. But that's not our issue. That's not our problem. That's their problem. Um, a buyer's not going to pay you more money for your home because you want to get more money for it because of whatever reason you need more money because you don't want to pull more out of your pocket. The buyer doesn't value your home based on how much you need to get. They care about how much the property is actually worth. I'm just trying to add these graphics to the notes here. It's not working out quite the way I'm planning. Hold on, let me take a screenshot. Maybe that'll be easier. Sorry. Yeah, that was much easier. Or screenshot, then we'll be done here. Much better. Just trying to add these graphics to our notes that I'm creating here that I will be sharing with you guys in the shared Google Drive. All right. Pass that now. All right, so value can be described as the present worth of future benefits arising from the ownership of real property. I think that's a definition that they use more on school exam than they do on the state. But either way, do that highlight there.
I'm good.
Okay. Situs is a people's preference for location. I mispronounce this often as situs. Once you find that perfect location for your family where you want to build your home, you say, we're going to sit us right here. You know? So I mispronounce this word on purpose as a way that I find easier to remember what it means. It's actually pronounced situs. Situs is a people's preference for a location, and you're going to need to know that for exam. It will be on exam. So, situs. We're going to sit us right here. Once you find that perfect location where you may want to build a house and settle down. And what are the three most important factors when determining, when picking a location? Or preferences for a particular location. There's three major factors affecting value, and the factor that affects value is location, and what's that last one? Oh yeah, location. That's right. That's right. So I have a little bit of a history on this slide that I put together here for you. Here's some resources where I got the photo and a little write up, and this photo was actually, as you can see from the McKinley family picture album. There's also a movie called Far and Away with Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman that did a reenactment of this whole what was going on back then in this date, and actually some of the scenes towards the end, they actually are a part of this Oklahoma land rush, which instead of me explaining it, I'll let the video do it. I put together this video for you guys so that you could see an explanation of what happened back then and a little bit of history of homesteading.
The Homestead Act became law in 1862 when it was signed by President Abraham Lincoln. U.S. citizens could get 160 acres of unoccupied land west of the Mississippi River and east of the Rocky Mountains. They could keep it if they lived on the land for 5 years and made improvements to the land. Around 50,000 people lined up to claim around 2 million acres of prime land. At high noon, they were allowed to enter the area and claim the land. This is an actual photo from that day courtesy of the McClenny Family Picture Album. Homesteading was a great opportunity for many people, especially immigrants just moving to the United States. Anyone who was over 21 years old could own land. This included former slaves, immigrants, and single women. Some people snuck onto the land early and hid in order to lay claim to the best areas of land first. These people were nicknamed Sooners. Today, the mascot for the University of Oklahoma is the Sooner. Around 10,000 homesteaders settled.
Ain't that something? You got a university, the state's university. They nicknamed their mascot. They named their mascot after a bunch of cheaters. The Sooners.
Is the Sooner. Around 10,000 homesteaders settled around the area that is today Oklahoma City. The next day, April 23, 1889, the city was established with a population of over 10,000 people. It would later become the capital of the state of Oklahoma. Interesting facts about the Homestead Act and the land rush. Northerners wanted the land to be developed by small farmers rather than the large plantation owners from the South. They were afraid the plantation owners would use slaves to farm the land. There was an $18 fee to file the application to get a plot of land. Later Homestead Acts allowed for 320 acres in areas for dry land farming and 640 acres for ranching. By 1934, 270 million acres of land had been given away by the United States government. Homesteading ended in 1976, except in Alaska where it ended in 1986. In the book Little House on the Prairie, Laura Ingalls' dad claims a homestead in Kansas. The following is a reenactment of the Oklahoma land rush that happened on April 22, 1889. The movie is called Far and Away, featuring Nicole Kidman and Tom Cruise.
It was a pretty, that would make it a pretty wild scene over there, huh? You could see them with the old-fashioned camera, with the early cameras snapping that picture.
Thanks for watching.
All right. Let's see. What are the 4 economic characteristics to value? All right. I pose a question to you, so I want everybody to pay attention to this. To understand what the 4 economic characteristics to value are. So for property to have value, we got an acronym here, another acronym, DUST. Demand. There has to be a need or desire by someone who can afford the land and is willing to buy it. let me, a need or desire by someone who can afford and is willing to buy the land. Utility, it has to serve a human need or desire. If it doesn't serve a human need or desire, what good is it? Scarcity, it has to be limited in its supply. And transferability, ownership should be easily transferable from one owner to the next. Otherwise, the value may not be there if it's hard to transfer that ownership. So these are the four economic characteristics of value. So now that we know that, let me pose a question to you. A builder is constructing a site with 500 homes in the area, and you want to get a permit to put up a combination laundromat convenience store. Which economic characteristics to value would apply to your situation?
Wouldn't it be demand?
It would be utility. You got 500 new homes being built in the area. You need a lot of convenience area. So for the purpose of putting up a combination laundromat and a convenience store on that property, it's going to be utility to serve that human need or desire. You get what I'm talking about?
Yes.
All right. So what is an appraisal? An appraisal is an unbiased estimate or opinion of value that is based on supportable evidence using approved methods by someone who is licensed as an appraiser. An appraiser is what we call the people who are licensed to determine value. And it is a profession that requires licensure. So an appraiser is an independent person. They don't work for the lender. The fee is paid by the borrower. The lender selects them, and they're trained to provide an unbiased estimate or opinion of value based on supportable evidence. Okay? I elaborated a little bit more on that.
I'm good.
So, types. First off, you'd start off as an apprentice trainee after you took a 90-hour course of appraisals, appraisal study, and passed a state exam. Look, in real estate, you guys are here taking a 75-hour class to learn various topics, and you got to pass an exam. Imagine taking a 90-hour course and just to become an apprentice trainee who cannot work on their own. You become the gopher and probably doing a lot of the work by a licensed residential appraiser or under a certified residential appraiser, most likely. And so to become a licensed residential appraiser, you have to complete an additional 150 classroom hours of appraisal courses and have 2,000 hours of experience in no fewer than 12 months doing appraisals. A licensed residential appraiser is limited in appraising properties valued only up to $1 million, though. Now, if you want to appraise properties valued over $1 million, you need to become a certified residential appraiser. Now, in order to do that, you need to have a degree now. You have to have an associate's degree or higher. Now, these are new requirements that some politician put in place after the whole mortgage meltdown stuff, so that they could be like, yes, what did I do? I passed more stringent requirements on appraising profession to try to ensure that we don't see these inflated prices in the marketplace anymore, that we have properly educated appraisers that are doing them. It's just politicians pointing the finger again, and just trying to seem like they're the hero. They cured some kind of problem. However, appraisers were never the problem. They were valuing properties using approved methods and data. And it's evidence, it's based on supportable evidence that they could prove that dictates their price of valuation. So that was just a BS thing, but now it's an additional requirement to become a certified appraiser. You have to have a degree now, an associate's degree or higher. But a degree in what? It don't say. Okay, so you got your degree in gender studies. How is that going to make you a better appraiser? See what I mean by being stupid? It's nonsense. Now, if it was a specific degree that you had to have about a specific topic, well, that'd be a little bit different. But it doesn't matter as long as you have an associate's degree or higher. Now, applicants with a degree may substitute at least 21 semester credits in specifically in English, economics, mathematics, business, or law courses. Well, that should be what the degrees then that they should have been required to have. The students must also complete 200 hours in approved appraisal courses and have 2,500 hours of experience in a period of at least 24 months. So 2 years doing appraisals. And then a certified residential appraiser has no limitation on the value of residential 1 to 4 family properties or that they can assess the value on. Now, if you want to appraise commercial properties or land, you need to become a certified general appraiser. To become a certified general appraiser, you need a bachelor's degree or higher. An applicant without a degree may substitute 30 semester credits in the courses mentioned previously and 2 elective courses in accounting, geography, AG economics, business management, and real estate. In addition to 300 hours of approved additional courses and to 3,000 hours of experience over a period of at least 2.5 years or more, with at least 1,500 of those hours spent on appraising non-residential properties. Now, unlike residential appraisers, certified general appraisers have no monetary caps or limitations on the types of properties they can appraise. In every case, the required course of study must include a 15-hour national USPAP course. That's the Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice. The real estate appraiser license law requires that individuals who wish to be licensed or certified as appraisers must undergo a criminal background check. This is a little bit older. They should have put a little asterisk next to that because remember they passed a few laws now about criminal background checks being racist and all. So you got to be careful about that requirement. So real estate agents become members of NARD. I'm trying to explain to you how you could understand what USPAP is, because on your state exams, appraisers, they become members of a group, a trade group called MAI. They become members of the Appraisal Institute. We as real estate agents, we become members of NAR. So what NAR is to us, MAI is to appraisers. And NAR members have to take a Realtor's Code of Ethics training class every 3 years. Well, members of MAI, they need to take 15 hours of USPAP courses every 2 years. Well, actually, all licensees, not just members of MAI, if they're not members, they need to take that 15-hour national USPAP course every 2 years. So for a better understanding, what NAR is to us as real estate licensees, MAI is to appraisers, and what the Code of Ethics is to us, USPAP is to appraisers. As long as you know that MAI or USPAP has something to do with appraisers, my understanding is you'll get the question right on exams. Okay, let me just grab something from that screen. That thing about USPAP and MAI. Screenshot that. And we are. I think we're on. There we go. So I put together this slide that just gives you the basic rundown. It doesn't go over those college course substitutions or any of that, but this is a slide that's just a basic rundown of the different types of appraiser licenses and appraisal licenses and appraisal licenses. No, that's not right. Appraiser. Yeah, the different types of appraiser licenses. Okay. So MAI, once again, member of the Appraisal Institute, USPAP, that's the Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice. So what the Code of Ethics is to us, USPAP is to appraisers. They're required to take it every 2 years. MAI, that's the member of their trade organization. Now, appraiser license types, we got the apprentice trainee, then you got the licensed residential appraiser. So, they can appraise residential properties up to $1 million. A certified residential appraiser, they could appraise residential properties to any value, but only residential. And certified general appraisers, they could appraise any type of property with no monetary caps or limitations on what they could appraise. So, in order for a certified residential appraiser to become a certified general appraiser, it says that they needed to complete 3,000 hours of experience, with at least half of that in appraising commercial properties. So how is that going to happen if a certified residential appraiser cannot appraise commercial properties? Well, the fact of the matter is they can, under the supervision of a certified general appraiser. So they're going to have to work with and under a certified general appraiser for a period of time. You got to put in your dues. That's why you start as an apprentice trainee, then you become a licensed residential appraiser, and then a certified general appraiser, and then become a certified residential, and then a certified general appraiser. And then there's also these things where it doesn't matter which appraiser license you have. If you want to appraise properties for FHA loans that require FHA loans, you have to take a special designation course to be able to appraise those properties. So, because there's certain things you need to look out for and additional things you have to notate on the appraisal reports as an appraiser that's appraising, doing appraisals for FHA loans. And half the loans out there are FHA, so really need to you really need this designation if you want to get anywhere in the real estate business and you're appraising residential properties. All right, so let me ask you guys a question. What kind of license is required to do an appraisal? What kind of license is required to do an appraisal?
Appraiser license.
An appraiser's license, right?
Yeah.
So that's a little bit of a trick question there, isn't it? It's looking to see if you're paying attention. That may be a question you get on exams. What kind of license is required to?
Yeah, USPAP, Uniform Standard of Professional Appraisal Practice license.
Yeah, because we just went over all the different types of appraiser licenses. Now you may be trying, oh, which one is it? Which one is it? I just asked you.
USPAP, Uniform Standard Professional Appraisal Practice license.
Okay, so I asked you a general question.
Mm-hmm.
No, we're not talking about you having a specific type of license, because I said what kind of license is required to do an appraisal.
Yeah.
Now, if I were to ask you what kind of appraiser's license is required to appraise a residential property that's valued at $1.2 million, it'll either be certified residential or certified general appraiser license. But if I said what kind of appraiser license is required to appraise a property valued at $1.2 million, where there are 4 residential units and 4 commercial storefronts.
That's certified general appraiser.
Certified general.
It gets commercial because there's commercial property involved.
Yeah.
Certified general appraiser. So you got to really, they will give you some kind of question on state exam about this. So you need to understand MAI and USPAP has something to do with appraisers. I gave you a way to try to remember it by comparing it to the realtors. You know, we become members of the Realtors Association, NAR, and then we follow, we got to take the Code of Ethics classes. They got to take, they become members of MAI and they take USPAP classes. But USPAP is a requirement of just the licensing, not the organization per se. Now, yeah, that's it. That's it. Okay, so let's learn a little bit about value. Let's start getting a little bit deeper down the rabbit hole. So market value is the price that a ready, willing, and able buyer who's not forced to buy will pay a seller who's not forced to sell. So it's the most probable price the property will bring. It's based on supportable evidence. Payment has to be made in cash or its equivalent, like a mortgage loan. It has to have had reasonable length of time of exposure to the marketplace to get a true picture of market value. And both buyer and seller are acting without undue pressure. Neither party has to buy or has to sell. Both parties must be well informed of the property's assets, defects, and its potential. The valuation is estimated by a real estate licensee and licensed appraisers. And the market value assumes it is an arm's length transaction. Oh, so what is an arm's length transaction then? Now we're introducing ourselves to some more terminology here. Well, a transaction is one between parties who are relatively strangers to one another. They're not close to each other, meaning they're not related. They're not best friends. Each party's trying to do the best for themselves. So the seller's trying to get the most money they can for the property. The buyer's trying to get it as cheap as they can. And wherever they meet, well, whatever they agree on, settle on, well, that's the market value. Okay? So what is an arm's length transaction? It's a transaction between people who are relatively, what do they say here? Who are relatively strangers to one another. Okay. Actually, that's the wording I put in. I think the book uses different wording. Actually, no, I think they use the same wording. They're relatively strangers, but a lot of people, they get confused. They're like, well, how could you be relatives and strangers? Well, no, that's not what they're talking about. They mean you're relatively strangers to one another. You're not that close to each other. In order to get a true market value, because look, if you are related, if you're close to each other, what are the odds that if you're selling a property to your sister, and let's say there's no family drama, you love each other, what are the odds that if you're selling your house to your sister, that you're going to give her a break on the price? Barring any family drama, you love each other, everything's cool. Barring any family drama, what are the odds you're going to give her a break on the price?
Well, of course, like, if it's a sibling, of course, like, why
Yeah,
not?
that's what I'm saying. You're selling it. You're selling the property to your sister whom you love. That's your sister. You'd do anything for her, right? What are the odds you're going to give her a break on the price if you sell her your own house? That you're not going to be trying to rip her off and get the most money possible for the property. Pretty good odds, right? That you're going to give her a break. A little break at least, right?
Yeah, a break, of course.
So you cannot use that sale then as a comparison to determine the value of another property that's similar to yours. Because there is an outside force or factor there that affected the value, the sale price. So it's not a true reflection of market value because it's likely you gave her a break on the price because of your relationship. You see what I mean? So appraisers have to investigate this. If they're checking comps, they run comps, comparable properties. These are homes that are properties that have recently sold that are similar in size, style, location, and amenity to the subject property to determine the value of the property. But they also need to look into those comps. Were there any outside factors or forces that may have adversely affected the sale price that we are unaware of? They need to look into that as well. We as real estate agents, we don't get that deep into it. We're not licensed appraisers, but we give a CMA. We just base it off of the sales. But so arm's length transaction makes a big difference. Okay, so this is a good slide explaining that a little bit clearer, I guess, because I give that example here down at the bottom. All right, so let's do some.
So Victor, the question here is that appraiser, when appraiser is making a comparison of the same values properties nearby, so they are going to do the title search to figure out that who was the seller and who is the new buyer, so you can find out either related or not.
They're going to look at the names.
So name can be by name. We cannot determine. Maybe my name is Vinny Thakur when I sell to the Johns, or my brother name is Vinny Jha. So that is not by simply saying name we can figure out that this is related or not.
I didn't say it was easy. They could look at the and I wasn't finishing my thought yet. They could just look at the names as well to see if they're the same last name or not. Well, look, married people, they get different names as well. So often what they would do is they would call up the real estate agent. So you may get calls from time to time from an appraiser that's trying to do an appraisal on a property, and they need to get a little information about the home that you sold, transaction that you had. It could have been a couple months ago. And they're going to ask you, was it an arm's length transaction, or were there any factors like, were they, relatives or anything like that involved that were selling the property? So they may just call you up and ask you this information. Even if you do a title search, that may not even uncover the relationship of the parties. So they got to just poke around and ask questions a little bit, and then they may send you a.
Yeah, understood.
Yeah.
Then-
Somehow they are trying their best, but still, it's not 100% sure that they going to figure out or not. But if you can see that this price, this building house price is lower in comparative to others, then definitely they can do some research that it looks like maybe they given some discount to relatives and all.
Yeah, so they'll ask if it's an arm's length transaction. They'll ask if there was any chattel that was included in the sale to finance this purchase, because maybe it was for an amount higher than what the other homes are going for in the neighborhood. So they're going to ask, well, was there any chattel included in the sale that justified the difference? Did they include the closing costs or something like that was bundled into that actual sale price that's reflected there in the MLS and in the tax records? Or because the sale price, it's supposed to be just on the value of the property, not any personal property or closing costs bundled in. But you wouldn't know that unless you ask, because all you see in the records is how much the person bought the property for. So the appraiser often called up to ask, were there any closing costs included in that sale, or was there any chattel that was included that could have justified that fluctuation in price? If not, then that's a reflection of market values are ticking up. And they need to take that into consideration now when valuing another home, so that now property values are now starting to rise. But if it's because of they just bundled in the closing cost into the sale price and they included the washer and dryer, well, we got to account for that. That's not a reflection of the true price. So they may have to show that it's not actually trending up in value. So they got to do their investigation and their research. Okay, that could be calling us, asking us a couple questions, and if we're helpful, they may even ask us if we could use our tools, the MLS, to search a couple properties for them and find out a little information for them. And then in exchange, they may end up sending you a gift card to Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts or something like that. I mean, any pay that you get, it's supposed to go through your broker, though. But this sometimes happens. Appraisers will do that as a thank you. Okay. Values in real estate. Cost relates to the past, price relates to the present, and value, that relates to the future. Think on that for a second. Yeah. So cost relates to the past. Are you going to base your purchase price of a property based on how much it costs somebody, a seller, to do some improvements that they had done on their property? Or is that kind of irrelevant to your offer? Well, I paid so much to get this done. No, look at it for anything. Look at a car you buy. An owner paid all this work to get the transmission rebuilt or something. Are you going to base your cost, the price that you pay them to buy that car, based on all the money they put in it for improvements to fix it up? No. How much is it worth today? What are these cars going for today? Same thing with real estate. Nobody cares how much it costs you to install the pool. How much does the house much is that house valued today? Right? The price relates to the present. That's the price that someone's willing to pay you for it right now. And the value relates to the future. How much can we get for it? So we try to provide an unbiased estimate or opinion of value based on supportable evidence, just like an appraiser does. So value, price, and costs. Market value is an estimate based on the analysis of comparable sales, based on solid data, evidence, to calculate the projected sales price, which is the current value. Y'all with me, right? The market price, in a perfect world, the market price and the market value and the market price are one and the same. If you did a good job trying to determine that value, then it should sell for the same price. That would be the market price is the selling price. It's what the property actually sells for. And cost relates to the construction. Total fee to construct or make improvements. It has little to do with the current value. Cost relates to the past value. Buyers don't care what improvements cost. They care about what the current value is and what it's worth now today. Not all improvements pay for themselves either. We see all these TV shows, fix this, flip that. They tell you how much that made the home worth, but they don't show you an actual sale and if somebody was actually willing to pay that much more for it. So cost does not equal the market value. It has little to do with it. The time where costs plays the largest role is when, say, it is new construction. Then it plays probably the biggest role at that point, if it's new construction. But even in that case, they could be off. They could be wrong. I dealt with a builder once before. I'll give you an example. I've dealt with a builder who he worked for a contractor. He worked for a builder for years and years and years building new construction. And eventually he said, you know what? Screw this. I'm going to become my own builder. Got his own builder's license. He knows how to construct a home. He built plenty of them. So he started his own business to become his own independent builder. Bought a piece of land, got a loan. He learned how this gets done, constructs a home, and then tries to sell it. He listed it through me. Told him, I was like, it's kind of expensive home for that area. Yeah, but it's right on the wall. Yeah, but you bought it in a neighborhood where the homes are much, much cheaper. The neighborhood with the more expensive homes is a couple blocks away. He's like, yeah, but they're not on the wall. Okay. I guess he's familiar with construction and building, but not so much as marketing and valuing properties. Because it never pays to have the best house on the block. You'll never get your money back, especially if you build a mansion in the middle of a middle-class neighborhood.
I have a question, teacher. I'm sorry for the interruption. So, what determines a house to be expensive? Because since I do landscaping with my dad, and there are people telling me
what other homes around it are going for. So remember, what determines the value? It's based on supportable evidence of recently sold similar properties in the area, or even the neighborhood, if you could get it down like that, that are similar in size, style, amenities that have recently sold, size, style, amenity, condition that is recently sold, and then you make adjustments for the differences for the value. So that's how we determine the values of properties. It's a lot of factoring in that we need to put into place. Okay, you need to compare apples to apples here. You can't compare a small house over here next to a huge, ginormous house right next door. I mean, you can't possibly expect that smaller house to go for the same amount of money as that much larger house, right?
Yeah. But do also factors like a house being near like a train station affected, or does a house near?
Yes, those are other factors that we have no control over. If you have a property right next to the train tracks, that may not be a selling point. Now, you having a property that's near the train station, it depends on where it exactly that could make it more valuable if it's in the neighborhood, but not necessarily right next to it, because your house is going to be shaking every time the train goes by. you know what I'm saying? So
No. Yeah. You can continue what you were saying. I was just agreeing to what you were saying, that like it's just different factors surrounding the house that can contribute to the cost of it, to the value of it.
Yep. I mean, what if your house is behind your backyard is a cemetery? It's a quiet neighborhood.
Quiet neighbors.
Yeah. No. These are factors beyond our control. These are what we call off-site conditions. People may not even want to buy it because of these factors. Yeah, so I mean, having a home in a town that has a train station that's like the Midtown Direct or something like that is a little bit different than being right next door to the train station. Across the street's a little bit better, but the block behind it's even better. You don't have to hear the train so loud and shaking your house every time it drives by.
Yeah.
It really depends on the construction and the situation, exactly where it is and all that. There's other factors that need to be considered for determining the value. So we're going to get more deeper into that. We're learning about these things. We're going to get a little bit more. First, right now, we're just going over some basic theory that appraisers and we as real estate agents should also take into consideration. We haven't even talked about how to value a property yet. I just mentioned a couple of things because you asked, but those are on slides that are to come right now. So bear with me. We're going to get to these details. Okay. So cost does not equal market value. It has little to do with it. People don't care how much it costs you to build something. They're not going to base their offer price based on how much it costs you. They're going to base it based on what the current market similar homes are selling for. Similar in size, style, condition, location, amenity, all that stuff. Okay, so here are some more basic principles of value. The highest and best use. So once again, we're still talking about theory. Highest and best use. They need to take that into consideration. What is a highest and best use? It's the most profitable current use. It's the most profitable current use that a property can be used for. Or a use that'll be most in demand in the reasonably near future. An amenity is a bonus, a feature that's tangible or can be intangible benefit to the property. An example of amenities would be clean air, nice views, or convenient features like spas, pools, jacuzzis, heated floors, a heated toilet seat, a bidet, high-end appliances or custom or some other custom feature. These would be examples of amenities. So you guys need to be able to recognize and understand what an amenity is. It's a tangible or intangible benefit to the property. Things like clean air, a nice, beautiful mountain view, a lake view, an ocean view. Would people pay extra for that?
Yes.
But you can't touch a view, can you? So it's an intangible asset. It's an intangible benefit to the property. Unlike things like a pool or a jacuzzi, those things you could touch. So amenities can be tangible or intangible, as you could see. Having a bidet. You know what a bidet is, right? Anybody know what a bidet is?
It's like a toilet, like a fountain.
Sorry?
It's like a toilet, but like a fountain at the same time.
It's a fixture that's usually right next to the toilet. It's very common in Europe and some other countries. Instead of wasting toilet paper, it's kind of like a toilet seat that shoots water in your privates to clean your butt after you take a poop, or for ladies when you're sitting down and you do your business. It's a way to wash off, and you use a lot less toilet paper. Or in some of these areas, they'll use towels after washing themselves with the water. You know, but you could also adapt a toilet seat, a bidet seat or fixture to a existing toilet bowl that you have. I actually did that during the great toilet paper famine of 2019. You guys remember that? Everybody was buying up the toilet paper. Like it was going to be going out of style, and they weren't going to be making it anymore. So the toilet paper prices went through the roof, and they were even limiting how much people can buy if you could find it. You guys remember that? At that time, I logged on to Amazon and I bought a bidet toilet seat fixture, hooked it into my plumbing, and then you could use a lot less toilet paper. And you get a cleaner feeling too, actually. It does clean you better, spraying high pressure water on your bottom, right? So that is a amenity. Okay, substitution. Substitution is another theory. It's a value set by cost of purchasing a similar substitute property. Huh? We'll see in a moment. So if you have two homes with the same location and attributes, the less expensive one sells first. Why? Because nobody will pay more if the same can be had for less. That's the theory of substitution. It's the cost that's set. It's a cost of a home that's set by purchasing a similar substitute property. Not that you did the purchasing, but somebody did, driving up the price. This could eventually lead to supply and demand. So let's just first do these highlights, and then we'll move on to the next slide that'll get deeper into that. So also on the margin of your book, write cost relates to the past, price relates to the present, and value relates to the future, so that you at least have that knowledge there somewhere. And then do these highlights. And then let me know when you got that all.
I'm good.
Okay. Yeah, everybody good? Are people still writing, highlighting?
No, yes, it's done.
I think the bottom part is like half cut substitution section.
Let me take a look. What do you see up to?
I see it up to there you go. Much better.
I didn't do nothing. What what do you see different?
So my screen only allowed me to see it down up to where it says substitution, the cost of purchasing another, and then I couldn't see like below another where it says if two similar houses are for sale in an area, generally the less expensive one sells first.
Okay, so you can see it now.
I could see it now. Yeah,
That's
I
weird.
finished. Yep.
The only thing that happened is I switched the screen that I was looking at. That's weird that it changed what you could see. Okay. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna try to maybe shrink that down so it fits better on the screen, maybe. Uh, Maybe that'll help a little bit.
I finished highlighting though, so we're good.
Okay. I just want to make sure that everybody's able to see the screenshots there. Okay, so everybody got this, or anybody still taking their notes? Need more time? Okay, I guess we're good. So, substitution, here we go. So, if there are three homes, they're exactly the same in size, style, location, amenity, and condition, and the only difference is price, which one would sell first? Which one would you buy?
The number one.
And why is that?
Because of the price.
Yeah, I agree with you.
300.
I'm sure a lot of other
Yeah.
people too. So you're too slow. Somebody beat you to it. Now, which one would you buy?
Number two.
This is the theory of substitution, that the price of purchasing a home is set by the price of uh, the cost is set by the price of purchasing a home. It's not that you purchased it, that somebody else did. Okay, but guess what? Somebody beat you to number two as well. The demand seems to be there and growing, right? And the supply is dwindling. So what does that usually do to the price?
Increases.
Increases. So this house costs more than the others, but it's probably going to sell for even more than that. Why? Because now we're in a position of supply and demand. There's obviously a demand for the homes in the neighborhoods here. They're flying off the shelves like hot potatoes. People are fighting over them. People are beating you to it. So they're driving you up on the price that you're willing to pay. But now there's only one home left, and maybe several buyers on the market that want it. So this house is probably going to sell for even more than that. That's the theory of supply and demand. So substitution can turn into supply and demand because that's actually what it is. You know, the cost of purchasing one home can be based on someone's purchase of another. All right, so here's some more theory of principles of value. So supply and demand states that the value of a property increases if the supply decreases and the demand increases or remains constant, and vice versa. That is true. Conformity. Conformity tends to stabilize value a lot better. When a home is conforming to the neighborhood, it never pays to have the nicest, biggest house in the neighborhood. You're never going to get your money back for it. Or when all the houses look the same and they're similar in size, style, everything, the values tend to maintain better. They're more consistent. Rather than you having a Cape Cod house next to a split level house, next to a colonial, next to a storefront, next to a bi-level. Those values are all over the place. They're not very stable. This is why even condominium complexes put rules in place that you can't have certain decorations or flower pots or plants or paint your front door an oddball color that makes it stick out. They want everything to remain uniform. So this is why condominium complexes, all the units look the same. Or maybe they have a standardized alternating pattern that may also look nice, but it's uniform. So it's conforming to the neighborhood. A property that does not conform to the neighborhood is like building a mansion in the middle of a poor neighborhood. You're going to get all your money for that mansion? Probably not. Not if versus if you had it in an area where there's a bunch of other mansions, and then you got to have properties that are similar, that are conforming to the neighborhood. Okay, non-conforming structures, they don't maintain the value as well. And that was that story I was telling you about, that builder where I got that listing. At the end of the day, he ended up just aggravating the middle class neighborhood where he built this large, expensive home because it was on a lake. He figured he could get more money for it. But all these other $300,000 price range homes in the block over there backing to the lake, where he decided to build a $750,000 house. It's definitely not conforming to the neighborhood, especially when the neighbors found out. They thought that was a beach of public property. They didn't know that it was private property, but it was just never previously developed on. So this guy bought it and built this house on it, and the neighbors were aggravated because they always used to walk across that property to get to this little peninsula where you could walk out into the lake, cast a line, and go fishing, or where people would drive their ATVs and mini bikes over it to get to the woods behind. That's the kind of neighborhood it is, where this guy's now building a $750,000 home. So it really pissed off the neighbors. It was even in the news. Yeah, great. I had a listing in the news, but that wasn't a positive one, so I don't want my company's name involved in that. But it was in the news that the neighbors were all outraged that this construction was going on when it was in progress. I didn't have my sign up there yet until the home was built, but it was the neighbors were not happy about this property. So kids were often vandalizing it while it was still, kids or young adults were often vandalizing it while it was still in construction. They even broke in at one point and stole the electric gas fireplace. It looks like they smashed a hot tub jacuzzi that was it was like $5,000 hot tub jacuzzi. They smashed up, and it's all cracked up and everything. They smashed a bunch of windows. The builder had to keep filing claims and then waiting for those claims to be paid out. And then he eventually had to get somebody to sleep there on the property to make sure that nobody would be breaking in and vandalizing it or stealing their tools or their construction materials. Eventually they finished the property. We tried selling it. The value just wasn't there. Nobody was willing to pay that money for that house. A couple blocks away was a neighborhood that had expensive homes like that, and if you built it there, I would have been able to sell it like that. But he built it in the middle of a cheaper neighborhood, middle class neighborhood, which is basically kind of a trashy element there. We had a hard time selling it. And even when I got him to lower the price, he still didn't lower it down to what I thought it should sell for in that neighborhood. And therefore, a builder has to pay back these loans. They get short-term loans. So they have to estimate to the lender how long it'll take to get the construction done, and when it'll be on the market for sale. They give some leeway to sell it, and then when it should be sold by. And if they don't sell it by certain dates, then the builder starts paying fines for not paying back the loan by a certain time. And those fines start increasing and becoming more frequent. And he ended up going out of business with the first home that he built because we were unable to sell it for the amount, because he made a bad decision building a mansion. Pretty much, it wasn't a mansion, but it was an expensive home in the middle of a cheap, much cheaper neighborhood, half the price at least. So eventually, when they got foreclosed on and the bank took it, guess how much they sold it for? They sold it for about 450, 475. It was somewhere in that price range, because the neighborhood was a $300,000 neighborhood. But this house was much, much bigger than all those other homes. But still, 450, whatever. He wasn't going to get 750 for it. His first house ended up being his last in his own personal venture as a builder, because he didn't know marketing or valuation, and he made poor decision. He may have been a good builder, but he didn't make good decision there on his first property. So regression, values drop when neighborhoods around you fall apart and homes aren't being maintained. All the homes start getting boarded up. People are getting foreclosed on. What does that do to your home if your home is in the same neighborhood and all the homes around you, the people aren't maintaining them, they're falling apart, maybe they're getting foreclosed on and boarded up? Does that affect the value of your home, which is beautiful, that you're well maintaining?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, it does. Because the theory of regression, as well as the theory of progression, is all ships rise with the tide and all ships fall with the tide. So if the neighborhood around you is falling apart, your value is going to be dragged down with it. But if everybody's building up and taking well care of their homes and property and stuff, that increases the value and the desirability and the value of the properties in the neighborhood. And so all ships rise with the tide as well. So even though your home may be a crap hole that you have been maintaining, you've been letting it fall apart, but it's now in a desirable neighborhood. So with all those other properties building up, you're going to have realtors knocking on the door, builders knocking on the door wanting to buy it. That's progression. Your home is being lifted up through progression. The value increases when the neighboring properties have higher values because they've been maintained. It's progression. Now, anticipation. Have you guys heard what they're building down the street over here from me? Anybody hear about that, what they're building over here? That's anticipation. Okay, so values can be affected by anticipation of something happening in the neighborhood. New industry moving in or out, improvements proposed, market changes, etc. But that's basically gambling. In anticipation of something happening and increasing the values, people may start trying to buy up all the properties around whatever it is that's going to be increasing the value, because they're gambling. They think the values are going to go up. Likewise, in anticipation of something negative may be happening, they're going to be putting in an incinerator nearby that could cause the property values to drop. Nobody wants to be by that incinerator. Oh, it's going to be polluting the air. Oh, it's going to do that. That actually happened a couple of years ago in Linden. They were going to build an incinerator here, but the city council was dead set against it. They're like, it's going to cause more pollution in the air and air quality. It's going to have more truck traffic that's going through with the garbage trucks, and it's going to decrease the values of the homes in the area. So Raleigh said, we'll take it, we'll build it. And they built it right on the border of Linden. And, right on the Route 9 of Linden Railway, they built an incinerator. However, this was an extremely modern incinerator that had near zero emissions. So it actually is burning garbage and generating energy in the process as well. So it was a one of those marvels of industry, clean incinerator way to dispose of garbage and generate energy and do it in a clean way. You guys know what I'm talking about? Where that's located? Has anybody actually looked over there and seen that incinerator? You may see the smokestack there, but I don't know if anybody actually knows that that's an incinerator. You may see it off to the side of Route 1 and 9 as you're entering Rahway. No? Wow. Plus, Rahway residents got an additional tax break for it because of all the money, all the revenue that it's generated. Neighboring towns are paying to dispose of their garbage there. They get it, and they, instead of having a garbage dump, they just incinerate it. They burn it all. But they burn it at such high heat. There's no smoke that comes out of that, that smokestack. You never see black smoke coming out of there. It's a clean incinerator, and it generates energy and revenue for the town. So that anticipation was not properly placed. Okay, so that's what anticipation is. But, here's another example of anticipation. Years ago in Linden, they were going to build a NASCAR racetrack. Did anybody ever hear about that? The NASCAR racetrack that was proposed?
Yeah,
Never.
but it not happen.
Yeah, it didn't happen. Look, you don't need to be a fan of NASCAR to know that wherever there's a NASCAR racetrack in the United States, there's a huge economic boom in the towns around it. Because when they have a NASCAR race, hotels and motels get booked a year in advance. Restaurants get huge booms of business, and all the other stores, they get a lot of additional traffic and sales. It's a huge economic boom to the area. So in anticipation of a NASCAR racetrack getting built in Linden, people were buying properties, land, that NASCAR racetrack was going to be built. And a lot of that was like marshland, wetlands, flood zone area, but they were stumbling over each other to get to it. Because the city council in Linden even approved it. They approved the construction for the NASCAR racetrack. However, the developer, they failed to get NASCAR's nod of approval that they were going to conduct one race there a year. Okay. And a racetrack, a NASCAR racetrack without a NASCAR race just makes it a racetrack. So they kind of scrapped that idea. They didn't want it to become like the racetracks down in the southern parts of New Jersey that don't work as well. They kind of struggle. So that wouldn't really help the local economy that much either. So they kind of scrapped that project. I have a couple of links and sources here for that Linden's history. Linden actually has a lot of history. Some of the, which I was unaware of, that some of the earliest NASCAR races actually happened in Linden over at the airport. I figured that it would happen like in Georgia or like one of the southern states or something, It seems like a real redneckish type of sport, right? I shouldn't say it like that, though. I mean, I like racing, but I don't watch any sport really. But look at this. Back in 1949 through 1954, the racetrack circuit was in for NASCAR was at Linden Airport. They had their Grand National races there. Look at that. This is the overview. This is the flyer of races in 1950 of the racetrack, how they used the runways and the taxiways on the airport for the racing. And here they have a list of all the race car drivers and the cars that they were driving, etc., where they were from. Here's a picture of a poster. Look at the grandstands over here. Look at that. You can still see that same building that's still there in Linden Airport. You see it? Look at all them hot rods. Hey, it's Grand National. Grand National is basically streetcar racing. There we go. Right next to one of these race cars next to the airplane. Look at that. General admission $1, tax included. Look at them prices back in 1950. Here's the airport today. Still got the same layout. Runway. All right. And here's just a thread that talks about the politicians and the actors and everybody that was involved in this, what the plans actually were for them to construct. And here we could see that the plans were for them to build a 100,000 seat grandstand expandable to 140,000 seats on a 0.92 mile speedway, according to NASCAR regulations. They were also going to build a 400,000 square foot entertainment center and a 20-story hotel and conference center. The developer, Morton Salkind, included a number of celebrities and politically connected people on the project. Among them were actor and race car driver Paul Newman, race car driver Mario Andretti, and political operative James Carville. Okay, but the thing is, they got the approval and they even got the funding to build this $401 million improvement there, but they couldn't get NASCAR to approve one NASCAR race. I mean, this was on the off the site, 140-acre site off the Arthur Kill on the old GAF property in Tremley Point section of Linden. I used to own a house right next to that area. He recently sold his $401 million proposal to the city council, which agreed to it, that aging industrial area to be redeveloped. The project would be privately funded and not require any subsidies from the city. So they got the approval and an agreement on the purchase price from the Tremley Point property. The problem came from NASCAR itself. All our dates are taken, the spokesman for NASCAR said. We just could not put any races down on the track. But Salkind said he was sure the arrangement can be reached with NASCAR. But they'll make open dates for New York metropolitan market. But they have reserved dates themselves, which they can share. They can give the dates happily. But the closest NASCAR racetrack to New Jersey was in Watkins Glen in the Poconos and Dover Down International Speedway. You know what? Linden, great location, especially with the history of Linden's Grand National NASCAR races. Unfortunately, NASCAR wasn't willing to give a spot in their calendar to dedicate a race. So people in anticipation, properties all around it, that's gambling. They blew that money because it ended up not going anywhere. I even got involved in it, not for the house that I bought. I bought that way after this. When this was getting built, actually, no, I had the house already over there in that area when they were planning this. But look, I got involved in the action because I went to the council meeting and I found out what they were going to call the racetrack. They were going to call it Liberty Speedway. So guess who's the proud owner of libertyspeedway.com? I bought the domain name thinking that I could sell it to them later on. You know, I only invested, what, $10 in buying a domain name, though. I didn't go out buying hundreds of thousands of dollars in real estate like some people did. So my gamble was controlled. So increasing and diminishing returns. This is how this works. if you have a house that's in need of a remodeling, desperate need of remodeling, you have a kitchen that's unusable, you will get all of your money back in any remodeling and repairs you do to that kitchen up to a certain point. You get every penny back up to a certain point because you're buying a property that has an unusable kitchen now. So any money that you put into it to make it usable is a plus. You get all that money back. So your return will increase up to a certain point. But now you start going extreme with your kitchen makeover. Everything above that point, you'll get some of the money back, but not all of it. Your return starts diminishing. When you start putting in everything has to be high end or custom, soft touch drawers and all this stuff, it makes it more desirable and does increase the value, but maybe not to the point where you get all of your money back. So your return on your investment starts diminishing. That's what increasing and diminishing returns is. Yeah. Not every kitchen needs a 100-bottle wine cooler, right? For your wines. Yeah. I know I've had some ladies in the class argue with me. They're like, no, I like my wine. Get my wine cooler. All right. But contribution. Here's another theory. Are you putting money back into the property? How are you spending that money? How are you contributing it into the property? Any additions could possibly increase the value. Absence of any improvements may decrease it. And how you're spending it, well, that could play a role too. And competition. Remember, we're not just talking about residential properties here. What happens if you're in an area that's got a lot of businesses, a lot of people work in the area, but there's no place to eat during lunch? If somebody puts in a fast food joint, you think they're going to be pretty busy and do good business? If there's no place to eat there in the area, but a lot of workplaces with many people working there, and they put in a fast food joint where you could buy food during lunchtime, you think that they're going to do well?
I think so.
Yeah, they're going to do well. But then if you see that they get so darn busy, those profits are going to attract competition. And just take a look at McDonald's. Anytime they put a McDonald's in, what do they usually put right next door or across the street from it?
Burger King.
There you go. I mean, we don't know this. I mean, I don't have to put the words in your mouth, right? You know what happens. So now they're going to put a Burger King, maybe a Taco Bell, maybe Five Guys or something else, you know. So excess profits attract ruinous competition. So they got to take that into consideration when valuing properties as well. And lastly, change. Nothing remains constant, and changes in the market conditions could affect the value of properties. The local changes in the jobs, the local political decisions that people make, regulations or over-regulations in areas. Crime rates can affect changes in crime rates can affect an area's value. Taxes, if they go up through the roof. Improvements or contamination or industry, weather changes, flood zone remapping of areas. Something that wasn't a flood zone may be a flood zone now. The local economy, the job markets, all these things play a role, and they can affect the value. So now let's start talking about value and how we determine it. How do we work with value? How do appraisers determine values of properties? Well, there are generally three approaches to value. Let me get caught up on my notes here. Let's see, increasing and diminishing returns, contribution, change. Okay, I have all that. Okay. The three approaches to value. Yes, we need to know that just in itself. What are the three approaches to value? So I'm just writing this adding this to my notes, these titles. And We have the sales comparison approach, also known as the comparative approach or comparison approach to value. And that approach to value, we do CMAs as real estate professionals to determine value by doing the sales comparison approach. We're comparing to determine the value of a subject property, we compare it to other homes in the area that are nearby that have recently sold. They're similar in size, style, location, and amenity to the subject property. We could do BPOs for lenders, but we do that in exchange for a fee. And then we also have appraisers. Appraisals are done by licensed appraisers, and they could use the sales comparison approach as well, and they do. But the sales comparison approach, this is the approach most often used by real estate salespeople. Did you guys highlight this sales comparison approach, the cost approach, and the income approach? You'll just need to study that alone because you could get a question on that. What are the three approaches to value? The sales comparison approach, the cost approach, and the income approach. Boom. That could be an answer to a question right there. You need to know the three approaches to value. Then you have the cost approach and the income approach. Now, let's highlight under the sales comparison approach. It's also called the market data approach. I never heard that. But anyway, or comparable approach. Either way, it's an estimate of value is obtained by comparing the subject property with recently sold similar properties that have already sold. And then we make adjustments for the difference. Those recently sold similar properties, we call them comps for short. Comparables or comps for short. And then we make adjustments for their differences. We know how much they sold for already. So we could just take that and we could get a basic guesstimate of the price, the general price range. But if you really want to get a more accurate reading of the value, you make adjustments for the differences between those properties that have sold and the one you're trying to determine the value for. And that's what appraisers do. They get really deep into that. Most real estate agents don't. They just pull up a couple of comps and they say, here's your price range. And then they get all mad when an appraiser appraises it for a value less than what they estimated it at. That's because they didn't really get into the granular structure of the value by making adjustments for the differences in these properties. So you can make adjustments based on time. When did those comparable sales of properties sell? Location, any physical features, the condition, the terms and conditions of the sale. They need to be taken into consideration. Everybody got this highlight?
Yes, it's done.
Yes.
All right. So I tell you guys over and over again throughout this class, because this is pretty good class to take. I mean, you could take one through the Realtors Association. I think they've got some sort of a valuation class that you could take. But you could also take this one taught by local appraisers, even though they haven't been doing it in person in the hotels like they used to lately. They're still in the teaching mode like we are. So this is most often used by real estate licensees, the CMA approach. So you can take that course, a CMA workshop from the Ottawa group there. I highly suggest you check them out. This is the approach to value, the sales comparison approach. It's best for pricing residential properties. It's best for determining the value of residential properties. So most often used by real estate licensees, best for residential property valuation. It compares a subject property to a similar comparable property comps that are similar in size, style, location, amenity, age, and condition that have recently sold, comparing it to the subject property. And then we make adjustments for the differences because no two properties are exactly the same, usually. Even though I could give you an example where I once came across an exact comp because a builder built 5 houses on the same block using the same blueprint. And he built them all in the same year, or I think 2 or 3 of them he built in the same year. The other ones were a little bit in the next year, you know. But I went in for a listing presentation to do a CMA for the owner, try to sell his property and list it. And I pulled up the comps and I found a couple in the neighborhood, but they weren't exactly like his, different styles and such, older. But I also found a house right next door that was built by the same builder the same year, just sold within the last 30 days. You don't find comps like that. That's not normal for us to get an exact duplicate property that just recently sold to compare it to. So that's the best comp you could get. If that owner didn't make any changes to their home, and the other one that sold was still the original too, you don't get comps better than that. You don't have to make any adjustments. It's like boom, boom, same house. What it just sold for? That's what your house should sell for. Okay? The comps, that's common sense, right? Why would anybody pay more? So, so we make adjustments. Oh, and make sure that when you're pulling comps, that you pull up a minimum of 3 comparable properties to compare it to. And then we're going to make adjustments on the sold properties for their differences to pretend if we're going to try to make them exactly as the home we're trying to sell. So the property we're trying to determine the value for. We're going to take the similar properties and we're going to make that have recently sold. And let's just say the only difference on the property was a bathroom or a full bath or an extra bedroom. You're going to determine the value for that difference, for that one item. And then you're going to make the adjustment to the other because you're going to pretend that that home that's sold, let's just say the house sold for $300,000. And if the only difference was it had an extra bedroom and that bedroom was, I'm sorry, the house we're trying to value has an extra bedroom. It has 4 bedrooms, whereas the one that sold for $300,000 had 3 bedrooms. And let's just say the value of a bedroom was $10,000. Okay. If it sold for $300,000 and it's exactly like the house we're trying to determine the value for, except it has an extra bedroom and the extra bedroom is determined to be valued at $10,000, then that property, if that's the only difference, that property should sell for $310,000. Right? But we're going to make adjustments for a lot of things. Age differences, style, amenities, conditions, square footage, all that stuff, you know? We make the difference for them. Now, how do you know how much to make the adjustment for? Well, that comes with either experience or taking a class like the CMA workshops from the Ottawa group. They actually give us a rundown of how to value the differences, how an appraiser does it. Wouldn't that be valuable knowledge for you? You know how your brokers probably do? Just a guesstimate. If they even break it down that much. So they adjust for time, the date of the sale. It should be recent. But what is a recent sale? Well, within 30 days would be perfect. But you start getting 3 months, 6 months, a year or more. Now we need to start making adjustments for when it's sold. Because remember, the real estate market's never steady. If prices fluctuate in the real estate market. So if the property that we're comparing it to sold a year ago, well, what were the values in this neighborhood a year ago? We're going to have to make adjustments by percentage of change of the market. Location should be relatively the same, but definitely in the same municipality. It's good to get it in the same neighborhood too, but definitely in the same municipality. The physical features and conditions should be similar. If not, we're going to need to make adjustments. And the terms and conditions of the comparable properties sold. We should know when to make adjustments for those differences. Now, the book here on page 311, underneath their comparables here, they're showing comparables A, B, and C, and a subject property that we're trying to determine the value for. And underneath it, they have a note there with some instructions. It says if the property is missing a feature, or is in poor condition, meaning it's in worse condition than the comparable subject, we're going to subtract from the value of the comparable to bring it to the same level. The goal here is we're trying to pretend that if those homes that sold, if they were made exactly the same as the subject property, how much would they have sold for? Because we already know how much they sold for. We're just trying to make an adjustment for that difference. And how much would it sell for if this was different or that was different? The difference that we're trying to compare it to is the subject property. So if a subject property has a feature or is in better condition than a comparable, we're going to add to the value of the comparable. Comparable, poor. So you need to know when to add or when to subtract, but I don't like these CBS, CPA. It's just another thing for me to remember. So I'll just do this. I'll use my hands. Okay. You can just use your hands like this. Here's the subject property we're trying to determine the value for. Here's the comparable property. If the only difference was a bedroom, and an extra bedroom was $10,000, right? If the subject property had 4 bedrooms and the comparable property that sold had 3, what do we got to do to the comparable property to make it the same as the subject? We got to add the value of a bedroom. So we know that this property sold for $300,000, and if a bedroom is valued at $10,000, we're going to add the cost of a bedroom, $10,000, to the sale price. And if that was the only difference, now they're exactly the same, and that's the price that this home should sell for. Or you guys can just do something like this too. Subject property or comparable. So the subject property has an extra bedroom, the comparable property does not. We determine the value for the difference for that bedroom, and we're going to add to the comparable value to bring it to the same level. Because the idea is we're trying to pretend we know how much the comparable sold for. We're trying to make it exactly the same as the subject property, and that'll give us a better picture of the price range it should be selling for. Okay? Here. So I put up a chart on the screen. I made up my own little chart here, which I should do some adjustments to because I don't like the way that this is. But anyway, whatever. It's good enough for now. So we got a subject property that it has a Cape Cod style home. And all the comparables that we pulled up, also Cape Cods. Good. So that we don't need to make adjustments for the architectural style. Because some architectural styles are more desirable and valuable than others, okay? So here we don't have to make an adjustment for that. It has 4 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, and 1 garage. All right, and we can see that, let's look at comparable property 1. It's a Cape Cod as well, but it has 3 bedrooms and only 2 baths and no garage. Oh, so we're gonna have to make a lot of adjustments for this property to make it the same as the subject. Let's just say that a bedroom is going for $5,000, a half bath is for $2,500, and each garage space $10,000. So this property sold for $300,000. It's missing a bedroom. Bedroom's valued at $5,000, so we're adding $5,000 to this comp's value. It has 2 baths, whereas the subject property had 2.5. Half bath is valued at 2,500 here. So listen, don't look at these numbers as realistic figures. I'm just trying to get you to know.
Yeah. Yes, just for understanding.
So the half bath here, we're going to have to add a half bath, and it's valued at $2,500. So we're going to add $2,500 to this comparable for the half bath. And it has no garage, and each garage is valued at $10,000. So we're going to add $10,000 here. So if this property were exactly the same and had the same features, let's add up the total adjustments, and that comes out to a $17,500 difference. So this property would have sold for $317,500. Now let's move on to the next comp, because we need to have multiple comps. Comp 2 sold for $315,000. It has 4 bedrooms, just like the subject property. It has 2 baths, so it's missing a half bath, and it has 1 car garage. So the only difference is a half bath, which is, so we're gonna, if we were to add a half bath to this, that brings it up $2,500, so $317,500. Okay, so we're getting a more accurate picture now of the price range that the subject property should be in. Now, comp number 3 sold for $320,000. It has 4 bedrooms like the subject property, 2.5 baths just like the subject property, but it has 2 garage spaces, not just 1. So garage space is valued at $10,000. So we're going to have to subtract the value of one of the garage spaces, because we're trying to pretend that comp 3 was exactly like the subject property. So we're going to subtract $10,000. Now that's not the perfect way to do this when you have a garage that has multiple spaces, because each space, a garage is worth $10,000, not each space. Each space you could add up and make a garage bigger, and it's not going to be the same construction cost just to make it a little bit larger. Okay. So that's not exactly accurate as I'm posting it here, but let's just still go with those numbers. So we're going to subtract $10,000. So this house would have sold for $310,000. But now we could give a more realistic price range to the property owner. I mean, the beginning price range was $300,000 to $320,000, but we made just a few adjustments, and we came out to a price range between $310,000 and $317,500. Okay, so we put it down a bit. That's our job, to get a more accurate price range. But what would you recommend that the value of this home should be to the owner? I would say it would be closer to $317,500 than $310,000. So how much are we going to list it for sale for?
$317,000.
I just put a perfect picture to the homeowner that $317,500.
$500, yeah, $317,500.
Your home. How much do you want to list it for now, to put it on the market for? Now this is where our struggles really begin. A homeowner may be like, I want to get $5,000 for my house. What planet are you living on? There's no comparable that I could locate anywhere near that. These are the closest comparables I found to your property, and that's the price range that they're selling for. So we can't be disrespectful to people, but we got to be direct. Listen, if you want to be okay, there we go. Sorry, I lost my connection here because of because I touched the wires over here. All right. So there we go. Everything's back to normal. So I lost my train of thought with that losing of that. What were we saying? So this gives us more accurate price range anyway. But now our struggle begins about how much do we list it at for marketing purposes? Are we going to list it what the value of that property is? Or are we going to try pricing it just a little bit higher, giving people room to negotiate down Or are we going to underprice it so that we could build a lot of excitement and energy amongst the buyers that are out there looking at this home that just came up on the market for sale, and maybe even get them involved in bidding wars. But Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I can't guarantee you that we're going to get any offers, let alone starting a bidding war. This is just a strategy that we could take. We could try pricing it a little bit higher to giving people room to negotiate, or we could underprice it to try to get a bunch of buyers' interest to get them to come in and now start bidding. Because once you got somebody that puts an offer in, they got the interest there. It's like fishing. You got them on the end of the line. You got them on the end of the hook, and you got to reel them in slowly. That's sales, guys. You got to reel them in slowly. So let's try to build some anticipation, get them by the hook, and once we got a couple of buyers in by the hook, now they could start. They get into that eBay frenzy mode, overpaying for crap. So now they're gonna maybe get a better price for your house. You may be able to sell it for well over this valuation price because people are now making higher offers. But keep in mind, if they get in that eBay frenzy zone, dial it back a bit. How much money are they going to get to purchase this home? What is that based on? How much will a lender loan you? We just went through
Based on appraisal.
we just went through 3 chapters of this stuff. How much will a lender loan you?
Based on appraisal.
Okay, it depends on the appraisal.
Appraisal value, the lender can see the price of the value of the property and then your personal credit score and all those things.
Because the property's value is going to be the collateral.
Collateral, yeah.
So the lender is not going to lend you more than the appraiser said the home is worth. As a matter of fact, they're not giving you 100% financing in most instances. You got to put some money down. So unless you're willing to dig deep in your pocket and knowingly pay more than the appraiser says that it's worth, you're not going to get a loan for that amount. So we as real estate agents got to know the realistic value of the property. And then when it starts getting kind of crazy, we got to realize, hey, wait a minute. That person's never going to end up paying that amount. So they're going to try to renegotiate later after they get an appraisal. So we got to keep it realistic, keep it close to the actual value. Maybe an appraiser will let it go for a little bit higher and justify a little bit higher price, but not something crazy. Otherwise, they're going to have to dig in their pocket. And most buyers are not going to dig in their pocket and knowingly pay more for a property than it's worth. Okay. Not unless we really got a market here with a lot of buyers and very few homes, and they're desperate to buy. Then they may be able to. Look, I got under contract right now a 1-bedroom condo. And they listen. This is a 1-bedroom condo in Island. I listed it for $275,000, and we got multiple offers, and still tripping over us. I got it under contract. I still got people calling me, trying to set up appointments to see it and make offers. I'm like, no, we're already under contract. But I mean, I guess in some areas where it's really desirable and the people have the money, they may be willing to. But you got to make sure they're not getting a loan then. Or they're willing to pay, they got the extra money to pay out of their pocket. Because if it's still contingent on an appraisal, I mean, how much more are you going to go? Okay, so does everybody understand the concept of when you add or subtract from a comparable's value when trying to do a CMA?
Yeah.
We're trying to make sure that all those differences we're making adjustments for. If the comparable property is missing a feature that the subject property has, we have to determine the value of that feature and add it to the comparable property's value. If it has a feature that the subject property is missing, we have to determine the value of that feature and then subtract to make it the same as the subject property. Okay? All right, let's move on. Once again, cost relates to the past, price relates to the present, value relates to the future. So this is the home value of selling your home. This is how the owner sees the value of their home versus the realtor versus the appraiser. Often it's an uphill battle trying to convince the homeowner of the true value of their home so that they can list it at a reasonable asking price and what to expect as a realistic offer in the end. Ultimately, most people need a loan to purchase the home, and a bank puts a lot of weight in the appraiser's valuation. So the bank will not lend more than what a home is worth, which serves as the collateral.
Mm-hmm.
So you gotta understand that. So the appraiser's value is the only one that matters here. A lender's not going to lend more money than an appraiser determines its market value to be. The property will be the collateral for the loan in the event of defaults. We as real estate agents try to determine value by doing a CMA, using the sales comparison approach, the same approach the appraiser does. However, the appraiser digs deeper into the details and the pricing adjustments and such, more so than most agents will do. So the appraiser sees the home like this, very modest. Real estate agent, a little bit, they see it a little bit nicer, you know. And the seller, well, they see it through an entirely different lens. And it's often an uphill battle for us to try to convince them to start working within the realms of reality. Now, we need to be direct with the property owners when we're getting a listing and just ask them straight out. You know, I prepared a presentation for you. I'm about to show it to you. So I can't change anything here. I'm about to show you this presentation. But right now, I'm going to ask you to get an idea where you're coming from. How much do you think your home is worth? So I have my report prepared. And then I'm going to ask the owner, how much do you think it's worth? So I could get an idea of what realm of reality, or if they're operating anywhere near reality, you know, with their expectations. Important to know. Ask them that question. And then ask them if they're not really close to, they're like way over. Ask them, well, where did you get that figure from? Did you just take a wild guess or guesstimate, or have you seen something that maybe I missed? Because my valuation is not going to be anywhere near. But let me know. I want to get your frame of mind, your thinking. Where are you coming up with your valuation? And then you start having a direct conversation with the homeowner. But be direct. Be polite, but be direct. It doesn't mean you have to be so forceful, but you could be direct and polite. You know, say, listen, values of properties are based on comparable sales. And I pulled up all the comparables. And these are the closest ones to your property that have recently sold that are the most similar to your property. We make adjustments for the differences. And this is the valuation that we got. And an appraiser is going to do a valuation the same way. And any buyer that's going to come in here to buy this property, most likely they're not buying all cash. They're going to need a loan. And so the appraiser's opinion of value is going to be of the utmost importance. And if their valuation is going to be around mine or less even, you got to be expecting it. So, is there any particular reason why you think your home is valued at this? Or are you flexible in that because you're just guessed at the valuation? Or it's because it's an amount you need for one reason, or you wanted to get for one reason or another. Because remember, want and need versus actual values are totally different things. And so we got to make sure we're all working in the same realms of reality here when it comes to the facts and figures. Because an appraiser is not going to talk to you. They're not going to care about what you want, need, or anything. They're coming here to provide it. They're going to come look at your house, do some measurements, take some pictures, and then they're going to leave. They're going to do their research, and then they're going to give a valuation. They don't care what you have to say. They're not going to take into consideration what you have to say. They're not even going to want to talk to you, really. So let's price the home properly so that we could get that market activity built up. All right? But we got to make sure we're working in reality. Would you ever take a overpriced listing? Guys, would you ever take an overpriced listing?
No,
No,
no.
Not really.
you really shouldn't. But most homeowners don't work in reality. And it's like banging your head against the wall, trying to show them the comps and how you came up with it to justify these prices. So sometimes you could show them all the proof, all the evidence right to their face, and they're still going to be like, okay, like agreeing with you on everything. Okay, so how much you want to list it for? And they got this pie in the sky high number. So we now need to try to overcome their objections by having these conversations with them. And sometimes it's not possible to get them to lower it. So would you still take that listing?
No.
I would say it depends. How far out of the realm of reality they're working in here.
Yeah,
Right?
how high it is.
Yeah, if they're not too far out of reality, I may still take that overpriced listing and hopefully try to get them to lower their price. You know, I'll tell them, listen, okay, this is what we'll do then. I don't recommend it, but we could try listing it at your higher price at the beginning. But I suggest that we discuss this. We'll look at the market activity, see what kind of activity we had of buyers and what kind of interest they showed, and then we'll review the feedback from them, and then let's revisit the price. Can we agree on doing that? And I'll have a conversation like that. I'll ask them questions like that to try to, now get this set up. And I'll be like, okay, so we'll set it up that 2 weeks from now, a week or 2 weeks from now, we're going to meet again and we're going to follow up with all the showings and all the appointments that were made and the feedback that I got back, and we'll go over it to see if we could make a price adjustment if we didn't get a sale, right? Because a house should sell quickly if it's priced right. All right, so you go through all of that, and maybe they still don't want to adjust the price. I'd still take the listing, even if it's overpriced, and even if they're not willing to do that right now. Because you never know. Later, you may be able to ship them down and get them to the right price or closer to it. And either way, we're going to get buyers that are coming in to set up appointments to see this house that's valued at whatever value you're at, even though it's overpriced. And when they come in, they're going to be like, that's not what a house in this price range looks like. Because if you guys ever start looking at houses, if you just do a little experiment, go looking at houses in the different price ranges in the same area. Start looking at all these things in a certain price range up to a certain value, and look at a bunch of them. And then start raise the amount you're willing to search in, and then look at the different houses within that thin layer of difference of price. And the next layer of price, you're going to start seeing distinct differences in the quality of the home, the condition of the home, maybe the amenities and size of the home. And now you could you could see this picture a little bit better. But so I'll take that listing, knowing that buyers are going to come in looking for a certain quality of home, and they're going to be like, oh, we don't got it here. I'll have some already printed out in the price range that they're looking in. I'm like, well, if you're not working with a real estate agent, I could show you these homes. Okay. Now I'm trying to sell my client's home, but they're not totally interested in it. So I'm going to still try to get them as clients to work with them. So basically, I'm getting a listing which is getting me clients. So I'm not turning it down because I hope to sell their home. It's not going to sell in that price range, but I'm still going to get clients off of it. That's the same reason why agents do open houses. Do you know how much real estate actually sells at open houses? Anybody have an idea? What percentage of homes put on the market are sold because they do an open house?
It's a higher chance for the house to get sold when it's an open house.
It is so microscopically small. It's well under 1%. Well under 1% chance of selling a home. Because what is an open house? You're just putting a bunch of signs in the neighborhood directing people and opening your front door who may stumble across it. And that's going to be the house that's in the price range, meeting all the features that they're looking for in a house. The odds of that happening are so terribly small. Less than 1% of open houses actually sell a house. So why do so many real estate agents focus on doing open houses? It gets them more clients. It gets them more business. Gets them more buyers. Buyers sometimes have homes that they need to sell. Those are potential listings. Plus, those are buyer clients now that even though they may not be interested in buying this house that's tremendously overpriced, we can maybe direct them to buy something else by showing them other homes and getting them as our clients. And now we start showing them other properties. And those are potential clients and sales for us. So you could get one listing that could get you a bunch of buyers. And some of them may even be sellers. Bonus, bonus, bonus. That's why we do open houses. We don't do open houses because we know that we're going to sell this house by opening it up to the public. The odds are against us, 99 to 1. You know, it's a very low percentage, but so many agents do it because they do it to get clients. The agents that tell you that they're hoping to sell a house at an open house, they're foolish. You know, does it happen? It does, but it's rare that a house would sell because of an open house. Just saying. All right. So, based on substitution. All right. You know what? We're going to leave off here. We'll pick up here tomorrow.